Pull up a chair and grab some coffee and join us for this conversation with Michelle Ledbetter, who is an RN CHPN. Michelle Ledbetter is a hospice and palliative care nurse with over 30 years of bedside experience. She's an author of the book From Fear to Freedom. That's a near-death experience journey through darkness and awakening. It's a memoir that shares her near-death experience and the soul lessons it inspired. Michelle's passionate about bringing heart presence and innovation to end-of-life care, helping people navigate some of life's most tender transitions with compassion and dignity. Through her work, she combines clinical expertise with spiritual insight, offering a voice of both healing and hope. You can learn more about Michelle and explore the services that she offers. You can find that at michelleledbetter.com. Welcome, Michelle. So glad that you could join us today. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And two things that I did want to talk about and get into was your near-death experience and your experience with hospice.
Sure. Okay. So I'll give you a little bit of my history.
Okay.
I have been a registered nurse for 33 years. 22 of those years have been in hospice. I have always felt a calling to help people in transition. Didn't necessarily know it was going to be life and death transition, but just to be helpful with people moving through any kind of transition. And once I was introduced to hospice, I knew that was where I was meant to be. It is truly a calling. It's not for everyone, but I find it such an honor to be able to be with individuals as they are moving through that expansion into the non-physical. It's just people are so grateful to have kind of a guide to move through that. So it's just been a wonderful experience.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I understand that it was working in a hospice field that brought you to your near-death experience. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, I was traveling as a hospice nurse, and I was moving from Montana to Texas, and there was a terrible snowstorm, and I was trying to outrun that snowstorm. I had a car accident that resulted in a L1 burst fracture, a broken spine, and a closed head injury. And when I was first became aware, I was being the paramedics were removing me from the car. And Laura, I had such a profound sense of peace that where otherwise you would think that I would be very panicked, I was very calm. The people that were helping me felt like angelic beings. I was in kind of a fog. I don't remember a whole lot of I remember waking to them getting me from the car. I remember a couple of little events, and then we had to do urgent surgery. They recognized after taking me to a hospital where they did imaging that my wounds were not stable, so they had to do emergent surgery. They transported me to a trauma unit, and that is where I experienced this altered reality experience. The way the way it began was I was in a warehouse type setting, for lack of a better word. It was very vast. It was very damp. It was colorless. And the first thing I recognized was I had a sense of my children behind me. And I turned to them as to invite them to come with me. And just through gazing at them, I heard them say, "Mom, we're not on this journey with you. You're doing this on your own." And they turned and walked out a big, heavy door that had a small window on it. And when that happened, I began to feel a panic, and fear started to rise in me, and confusion. And I didn't understand where I was, what was happening. I went to the door and looked out the window and saw them walking away into just a barren land that looked like it had been mowed down with big, heavy equipment. And so this fear began to rise in me. I turned back into the room, and I noticed there was a little boy and a little girl across the way. And there were a couple scenes that were very hard for me to see. And I don't like to necessarily go into all the detail of that because it was very graphic and gory. But then a life review for lack of a better word, like a film started, and I recognized it was my childhood. And my childhood was very uh, untraditional in the fact that there was abuse, both physical and sexual. I was raised solely by my father for the first 7 years. And then when he married my stepmother, I was introduced to Catholicism, and not having any kind of religious background before that, it was a very scary introduction to God for me. I remember being in a basement, sitting in these hard chairs, and being told that if I didn't do what I was supposed to do, that I could be cast into hell by this loving God, which didn't make any sense to me. Um, but my takeaway from that was that it was very fearful. I was afraid of God, and it just didn't make sense what I was being told and what I was experiencing. So as I'm moving through this review, I am watching myself go through my traumatic upbringing, and I'm also in it. So the emotions are magnified, if you will, of fear and sadness and confusion and having to relive that. And it just brought a compounded sense of fear and sadness, all those dense emotions that you have. And as my review started to end, I look over at a little girl, and as I look into her eyes, I start to see another life review that's not mine. And in this review, as her childhood is moving through, she has a horrific upbringing. And when I say that mine was challenging, it was very challenging, but hers was even worse than mine. And it was so scary because, again, I felt like I was on the outside, observing it, but I was also seeing it through her eyes and feeling her emotions of fear and panic and confusion. And so as all of these things are happening, the fear is just compounding. Um, when hers finishes, I look to the little boy, and the same thing. I start to see a review of his childhood, and I'm looking at it, and I'm also in it with him. And I see how he's being bullied and how there's just no real love that is expressed to him, and his anger. He's so angry, and the fear that he has. And so at this point, as I'm seeing all this and taking all this in, I just get to a point where I feel I can't take this anymore. I must be in hell with these children. And I had a warm sensation that started at my feet. And as it moved up my body, it almost forced me to look up. And as I looked up, the ceiling of this warehouse started to crack. And as it did, this brilliant light came in that isn't like a light that I've ever seen. It was a mix of gold and orange and yellow, and just the brilliance of it reminded me of fire and lava. And so in my fearful mind, I thought I am absolutely in hell, and that is going to come in and burn me. And it actually poured in. It wasn't like a light illuminated, it poured in. And as it started to pour in, I bent over to brace for it. And I felt this excruciating pain in my back, and I just yelled out. And when I did, I came to awareness in this reality, recognizing that I was in the hospital. And I saw a beautiful African American lady sitting in the corner, and I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I'm here to help you." And I later learned that because of my close head injury, as I was moving through my altered reality, I was acting it out. And so I was trying to get up and run out of the hospital, and I just had that surgery. They just put rods in my back and fused me together. And so they had to have physical people um, keep me safe, because they reserve sedation with a severe closed head injury, because they want to make sure that your neuro components are coming back. So on the heels of this, I see her and I say, "Great, we got to get out of here." And she's probably, as a nurse, I've seen this from the nursing side, and I thought those people are just losing it. I was losing it. So from her perspective, I'm sure. And then she started to blend into my Caucasian sister, and then I kept up the whole, trying to get her to get me out. And so it was still kind of an in and out sort of thing, and I was very much in fear. Um, as I slowly started to come back into this reality, I was so afraid and ashamed of what I saw. I didn't want anybody to think I was such a bad person that I went to hell. So I stuffed it. I didn't talk about it. And um, the following 2 years after my accident, I put myself through my own hell. Those emotions and that what had happened would try to come up, and I couldn't deal with emotions. From my early years, I recognized that you could numb emotions with alcohol, and I was never good at feeling my emotions. And so I went that route, and I became addicted to the pain medication, was consuming way too much alcohol, trying to suppress that was trying to come up and be seen. It got to a point where it was bad. If I didn't stop what I was doing, it was going to be the end of me again. And I sure as heck didn't want to go back through hell. So in complete surrender, I asked life. And again, I had a distorted view of God and religion. So that wasn't a path I was going to take. And that was from my upbringing. But I just completely surrendered and asked life to help me. And through the course of a meditation, I was exposed to a voice. I believe it's the divinity within me now, but it guided me to ask myself in this meditation, how can I see that event differently? And what was it trying to teach me? And by grace, I was escorted back to my hellish experience and was informed that the children were actually my abusers. And Laura, something in that moment, sometimes I get a little weepy and I didn't bring a tissue, but in that moment, the compassion and the unconditional love that I had for these children was so overwhelming that all I could do was extend it to them. And when that happened, there was something that lifted off of me that I never even knew was playing a part in my life. I did not even know that I didn't understand what unconditional love was until that moment. And I was able to grant the unconditional love that I was feeling and forgiveness to my abusers in that moment. And I recognized that some of the things that I had done in my life that had caused harm, I had done from a place of my woundedness, just as my abusers did what they did from a place of their woundedness, from a distorted view, from their disconnect from the divine. And in that, the compassion just allowed me to wake up to a whole different way of being. Addiction was no longer an issue. I didn't want to miss any more life. I recognized that I had been living life, looking through glasses with smudges on it, my with wounded eyes. And so I was not very good at connecting with people, although I was working in hospice at the time. I still had barriers, and those things that we put in front of us as we go through life, our life events and the conditioning that build barriers in front of the light that we are. And so slowly through practicing meditation, I was guided in how to remove those things. And ultimately, I forgave myself. And when that happened, the doors blew open. Life just started to work magically. The serendipities and the things that started to come my direction were you can't make it up sort of thing. And I recognized that we could actually dance with the divine, that we were direct extensions of the divine, that we couldn't be separate from that. And that is when it was just a beautiful turning point for me. In another meditation I do want to share, I was shown that the light that was coming in was actually the light of the divine, of God essence itself, coming to shine light on the wound that was in my soul. Not that the soul's connected to it, but those things come up, and the light just wanted to shine on it so that I could see it from the truth of what it was, a different perspective. And when I say, it's not that I am saying what was done was right, it wasn't, but I recognized where it was coming from, and it all started to make sense. And so in releasing that, it just freed me. And so now I want to share that with people. So because I believe now that heaven is can be lived right here and now, that the divine is within. We are truly connected to that, and we've been taught that we're not. But once you tap into that, that's where life gets magical.
Yeah, definitely. And that's so beautiful. Sorry you had to go through all that. But
I
that is
did. I
that's
had to
such a
go through hell
beautiful
to
thing.
find God.
And
I
I think
did.
we all do go through something in order to do that, if we're going to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the way that I see it now is that without that contrast, someone explained to me that, can you imagine being the divine and just being the divine and love and light? And that might get a little boring, right? Like, how else would you know the greatness of you, who you are, without the contrast? And so I believe that we are direct fractals of the divine, having a human experience, and in the contrast um, we are allowed to remember who we are, and in remembering who we are, we can appreciate the love and the light and the divinity that we are. So somebody had said something about, if you were sitting on in a mountain and it was storming outside, snowing and freezing, and you were sipping tea with your loved one and close to a hot fire. It's so beautiful. But you wouldn't recognize and appreciate that beauty had you not been in the freezing cold. So I think that the contrast is absolutely part of the divine, and it's our way of being able to recognize who we truly are, to move back to the light.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've had multiple, along with my near death experience, I've had multiple life reviews. And
Mm,
with yours, it, like you said, it's kind of where you popped in at. And when your takeaway from it was like where you were able to see why you went through what you went through, you were able to see from that perspective. And I
hmm.
feel like that's part of the life review. It's the lessons that we actually don't get in life is the reason why we have the life review. It's not as a punishment, like a lot of
Absolutely.
religions tell you, you're going to do a life review, you're going to get what you reap, you're going to get what so, but it's not something to the purpose. And I've gone through it many times, and it helps me see from the view of higher consciousness, source, or God, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
It helps us to learn the lessons that if we don't get it in the human life.
Absolutely. And that's such a beautiful way to put it. And, working in hospice, you've probably seen this as well. There are many people that go through what we call terminal agitation. And in that terminal agitation, I believe they're going through exactly what I was going through, the undoing of all those false limiting beliefs and all those false things that we missed, that where we couldn't see it through the Christ eyes. And it can be a little scary if you don't know what's happening. And it is absolutely not a judgment from some deity that's higher than us. It is our own undoing of those things that block the light. And the only thing that goes back with us is that love and light that we came from. So you got to dump the junk somewhere. I personally recommend doing it while we're doing this thing called light. Like, look at your stuff now so you don't have to go through that. But at the end, it's coming up so that the light can shine on it. It can be scary, but it's there to help you. So if people know this as they're moving through transition, it can soften the fear. It won't last long. It's just there to help you release those things that weren't truth. And that's the purpose and the beauty of it. And not to fear death. It can be very challenging for a person moving through terminal agitation and or the caregiver that's watching it. But to know that this is the possibility of what's happening, and I truly believe it with my heart and soul. Of course, there's no studies to confirm this, but I just believe it with all my being. And if people can hold a sacred space even when it's uncomfortable and know that it won't last, there's always peace before the departure of the soul from the physical form.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so also with me being in the assisted living right now, I'm being ushered into the death doula role
It's
and helping to
beautiful.
bring that awareness in to people who are passing, through
Yeah.
coaching and things that I'm going to be doing. I think it does. It's going to be very soothing for them in the transition. People can understand. And I think that's part of the whole movement right now, with doulas and bringing the near-death experience into light of the situation. And with the hospice or doulas from that perspective. Now, with the assisted living, I see people they have, and my mother, I think my grandmother had it. I don't know about my mother, if she's going through it or starting it, but um, the Alzheimer's, dementia. So I kind of see that, and from what I'm understanding, that is almost like a life review because they're reviewing their past, whether it was positive or negative. They're re-experiencing that on that
Yeah.
level.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, that dementia can be a challenging one.
Hmm.
But and I haven't really delved into the undercurrent of that, but as we're speaking of it now, in those times when a lot of times there's anxiety and anger and that sort of thing, and it would absolutely make sense to me that they are looking at, those things are being brought up and they have an opportunity to look at them. But yeah, that is a challenging one.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good possibility, but we really don't know because we're not in that space really. But it kind of can simulate that scenario for that.
Yeah.
Now, you said you were in this blackness. A lot of people refer to that as like the void. I know I went into the void and then into the light. I didn't have
Yeah.
any religious beliefs, so I didn't hold on to anything or go through any hellish experiences or anything like that. I went straight into the void, realized I didn't have a body or anything, and then beings showed up in the light, and then I was able to go with them once I dropped my human self,
Mm.
and then I was on the other side. Do you think that you were in the void, or what would you describe that as? Do you know?
It's interesting that you bring up the void. It's been brought up so many times in the last 24 hours. When I was on my podcast last night with cohorts who have had distressing NDEs, that was one thing that somebody was speaking to, the void, and how that was very scary for them. I didn't have that traditional total darkness, blackness, nothingness. So it's that's a different thing for me to contemplate. But I do believe that it, we have been told that darkness is fearful, but that's something that we've been told. And it's in that nothingness that ground is fertile and things can expand from that place where all life is formed. It's in the void of nothingness, no thing, that all things are created. And so I haven't thought a whole lot about it, but it's interesting that it's come up so many times in the last 24 hours. And that usually means I need to move in that direction and spend some time in meditation with it. But that's just the surface of what I was thinking about last night and this morning as it keeps coming up, such a fertile, beautiful essence of a place to be. That's where all creation starts. And so that's just my take on it now. It might change, but I can't really speak anymore to that piece of it though.
Now, I love when you said that the light was coming in, it was all these different colors, which in that space of fear you determined as maybe hell
Hmm.
from that. And it's interesting because, like, on the other side, it is so vibrant, so beautiful that here it is also beautiful and full of color. Everything is the color of the rainbow. There's any and every color that you can imagine, though it's kind of dim as compared to the other side. And so
Yeah.
there's such a contrast in color. that it's so vivid on that side, not versus here. It's
Yeah,
really,
it was almost difficult to look at. It was like, coming out of a dark room and turning on a bright light. It was, hard to look at. And again, I was so consumed in my fear, I couldn't recognize it as the divine. And I was afraid of God going into my NDE. I couldn't look at it. So, but yeah, the color was just beyond something. It's almost not explainable. But and when that happened, when the light, that was the first time I saw color. Otherwise, all throughout my whole journey in this altered reality, it was a grayscale.
with the religion and the hellish experiences. Um, so unfortunately, a lot of it comes through our upbringing and our teachings and religious and fear. And I know throughout my lifetime, I was given the choice by my mother. She would send us, and I didn't like anything that they were talking about as a child. And so me and my brother, right, instead of bringing the money, she wouldn't go, but she wanted us to go. And she would give us some money to go and pay into the church fund, right, when we went on Sunday.
Yeah,
And
I'm
so
laughing because I can't wait to hear what you did with it.
and so instead we went by the bakery and brought cookies.
I used to go to the little store across the street and buy candy. It's funny.
Yeah. And so we got caught, right? Because I didn't know, I don't know if it was the person in the store because the church was across the street from the bakery. So we went to the
Mhm.
bakery and then to the church.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know who told, the church or the bakery, but
that's so funny.
we got
That's so
caught and
funny.
found out.
Yeah.
And so then I was given the choice, do you want to go or do you not? And I was like, no, because like they don't, what they're talking about is not right. Like as a
Yeah.
child, I just knew it just didn't
Right.
feel right. And unfortunately, we get ingrained into that and we pass it down to our children. And then we have that fear when we pass over. And I feel like
Yes.
when we do pass over, we have to we go into the fear because it's part of our belief systems and we can't get to the other side unless we let that all go, kind of like what you were saying.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
And
but now that this has happened, I have been able to turn to the Bible, and I'm not a Bible scholar by any means because I'm very new to this. But when you read the words in red, what Jesus actually said, that's where it's at. If you were to let all the other stuff go, it really is that heaven is within, and that when we come from the heart space instead of the ego space, that's where life is just beautiful and unfolds magically for us. So I don't have an aversion to God and Jesus, and I can actually say the words now where I couldn't before because I couldn't understand how this God could allow such horrible things to happen. But now that I see it with a clear lens, it is something that component of the message that Jesus said, that Buddha has said, that all different religions, that same source of love is truth, and that at the end of the day, that is the light and the love that we all carry. But we lose that alignment because, first of all, we're never told that we are direct extensions of the life force energy that created us. We believe that we're separate, and it's in that separation that we lose that ability to shine. But we all have the ability to remember who we are through all of our events that happen. They're happening for us to wake up, to remember that we are more than this physical form, that we are divine beings having a human experience.
Beautiful. Yeah, definitely. And that's been my experience. I do still have an aversion to it. So I have
Yeah.
never been able to pick it up. I've tried. I've even tried to go into different systems like Methodist, Buddha, all of it, and they all have their take and their way that they want to do it. But uh,
Right. And that's beautiful that you say that, because if when you let go of all those things that we were taught and just tap in to that within the highest version of who we are, the truth comes from that place. And
mhm.
it's not in religious doctrine. It's not in religious doctrine.
Nope, it's not. And so since I still have an aversion to it and I'm not ever probably going to get past that. So I always try to find a different niche or way to go about it. And so I do meditation as well.
Beautiful,
And
beautiful.
I'm like, if I'm to know this stuff, you need to give it to me because I'm not
Mhm.
going through a religion to get it. I want the
Right,
truth. I want
right,
the truth. I don't want
right.
some variation of it because we all have a variation of it.
Right. Well, it's like that we were looking through smudgy glasses. We can't see the truth because of the religions and the doctrines that we have been told. So yeah, when you take those off and you ask the divine to ask, tell me, and you wait for that, it will come. It might not come right away, but if you're open to receiving it, it will come to you. It's beautiful. And you
Hmm.
start to dance with the divine. It's like in life, it's beautiful. The
Yeah.
serendipities, the sequencing, you can't make it up.
Mhm. I know, right? It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so definitely. And everything is divine timing, I found. It
Hmm.
may not be when
Absolutely.
I want it or how I want it, but it's the way that it is that's the path.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that we're going through this on a collective. I believe we're going through it right now on a collective level, in the fracturing of things that are going and the division that we've got going on between the separateness that we've got going on right now, and the fighting and all that dense energy that we have going on. But it's offering an opportunity. The foundation is cracking. It's giving people a chance to pause and say, wait a minute, something's not quite right here, and to reflect. And if people are open to doing that at this point in time, I think we're actually seeing a shift. I think it's an exciting time to be alive. And it's where we put our focus, right? Like if we're focused on the dense darkness of it, we're going to get more of that. But there is as much beauty and light and unity that's happening in this time, and if you focus on that, you get more of that. And it truly is where you choose to put your energy. And one thing that I've learned in my meditation is that our emotions are our God-given guidance to say if we're in alignment or if we're out of alignment. And if we're having emotions of fear, of anxiety, of jealousy, of anger, it's just saying we are out of alignment with the truth, the divine. So it gives us an opportunity, and we can feel that in our body. We can feel when we're carrying that dense energy. We can also feel when we move into those higher vibrations of the divine and love and joy, and that's where we're meant to live. I truly believe that we're meant to live in that place once we start moving through this, and that is the divine speaking directly to us when we have those emotions. They're not there to hurt us, or the negative self-talk. It's just to pause for a moment and allow the divine to speak.
Hmm. And I think too, a lot of people we teach emotions as bad, or you have to be if you're a male, you have to suck it up, or
Oh
you
yeah,
can't be in tune with your emotions, and so we fear them, and then we repress them, and then we break down. Our body has ailments, illnesses, diseases, and we're not
absolutely.
taught what the emotions really are. Is our navigational system, and I
it
had to
to-
relearn that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, and had we if we can, the younger generations are starting to get it, but it is our guidance system. It is there to help us. And um the emotions are, again, it's energy, it's frequency. You can feel the different energy of that, and all things are energy, right? That as far as death and dying, nothing can be created or destroyed. It only changes form, and that's because we're all energetic. Everything that is living is energetic. Emotional intelligence, it's where it is at. And I didn't even know what emotional, I was so unintelligent with my emotions. I was completely reactionary instead of responsive from a grounded place. And I think so many people are, because it's just not something we're taught.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Now, do you have before your near-death experience or after more intuitive abilities, or did you start having
Yes.
abilities?
Yeah. So yes, I have absolutely more intuitive abilities. I didn't know that I could communicate directly with that divine energy. Um, Looking back before my experience, I can see how it was playing pieces, but I was in charge. So I was missing a lot of the messages or the signs that were coming in. But since then, and my meditation practice has become a gateway to that communication. And the downloads, for lack of a better word, the voice of my higher self. It doesn't come from my thinking mind. I will, if I'm struggling with an emotion or something that's going on, I will go to that place. And one of the biggest takeaways are those two questions that first came to me. How can I see this differently? And what is it trying to teach me? And whenever I do that, and being receptive to hearing the answer, it will come. And it's just like, wow, that's a great answer. Like, that's it. Like, oh, I never saw it that way. So, yes, that's where my intuition comes in. And I'm also able to, it was a little challenging at first because I could see, I was focused on people's hurt and their boo-boos. I could see it bigger when they were acting out or anger or coming at me or, um, I now see beyond that. I can see it's the wound. I can see it's the smudge. I can separate myself instead of getting entangled in it. You know how somebody will say something and we'll be reactionary. Those are two wounds coming together to battle. But now that I have had my accident and this new awareness, I can see beyond that. So it allows me to separate myself and say, that's yours. What's coming up and out of you is yours. And if I'm not being triggered, I can stand in that space and it doesn't affect me. And everybody has that ability. It's just getting to a place where you can look beyond people's actions. Um, and so I see that a lot. I can see that a lot just in communicating with people. I can see their wounds.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Me too. And I'm always like, okay, is this me or is this them? Or I'm
Yeah.
always trying to find that energy in that line. And it's like, okay, and whenever I feel it come up within me, then I know it is me. And it's like, I have to redirect myself. It's just that presence moment redirect,
That
in
is
the
so
situation.
beautiful. That question is simple and it's so profound. Is it me or is it them? And if we
Mhm.
can be aware enough to ask the question when it comes up, because I don't know about you, but for the first 53 years of my life, I wasn't aware. I was so not aware. I wasn't aware of myself and what I was doing. But when you can tap into that awareness and that's a great question. Is that me or is that them? Because you'll know. And if you don't know in the moment, you take it home with you and sit with it in quiet and you'll know and you'll be able to work through it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I do. Like if I can't figure it out, it's like, okay, let me step back. I'll go away in my own little meditation or whatever it is. And then I'll be like, I'll regroup, and then if I feel like it was me, then, I will take the action to recorrect, in that situation, whatever
That's
that
beautiful.
is.
Yeah, how did you come to that? How did you come to that awareness and that way of being? I mean, I had to drive off a incline and about kill myself to get there. How did you get there?
I don't really know how that came about, but I've just kind of through my whole experience, and I have a counseling background as well. So
Wow.
I've kind of learned the different modalities and just learning from that and, checking myself because like if it's something and spirit works with me. It's like I have them as my own coach and
Yeah.
they're always on me,
Yes, yes, yeah.
redirecting me.
Yes.
And from my near death experience, my abilities to have awoken a lot. And I have that voice and I have that
Wow.
coach that is with me. So they're always like, okay, they'll give me like little tidbits or little information. And I would channel, um, oh, who is that psychologist? Bob, I think it was Bob,
Proctor?
um, not Bob Proctor. He was a psychologist for addictions.
Oh, I don't know.
I can't think of his name right now, but it'll probably come to me. But I would channel a lot of the psychologists who worked in that field, and they helped me with that distinction with kind of, okay, is that them or is it me? Or how do I be in this place? Because I was doing the counseling, so they were helping me with that.
Mm, that's so
Scenario.
beautiful. So
Mhm.
that you received that after your NDE, tapped more
Yeah.
into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I have guides and coaches that are always with me and
Yeah.
helping me
And I
to
believe we
see.
all do, right? We all
Mhm.
do, but we're not aware of it until we are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Um, now, so what are you doing now? Are you doing hospice still, or are you out of that and doing something else?
Yeah, so I I I was recently let go from hospice, and it was it's only been about 4 months ago. And what happened in that is it's absolutely my calling and I love it. But unfortunately, darkness even creeps into places where there should only be love, and there's billing practices that will either do an extended stay for somebody or an admission that's not quite appropriate. And as a nurse, we are asked to recertify every few months to make sure that people continue their eligibility. And I was one with the highest discharge rate because, they weren't quite ready. And since I have been through my experience, I no longer do things for approval. Um, I no longer do things based on fear. And so I was not necessarily good for business. And they found a creative way to terminate me, which in the beginning, almost went down the rabbit hole because it's like, who am I if I'm not a hospice nurse, right? But in meditation and taking that into meditation, I was said that this is it. Your foundation is fracturing. Can you live by the lessons that you learned in your NDE? And at first I was like, no, I cannot do this. I don't want to do this. But again, when I got to that place, I was held and told that I was being moved in a different direction. There was more for me to do. And so reluctantly at first, I surrendered. And in doing so, the doors have started to open in ways that I would have never, ever imagined. So, what I just finished my first book called From Fear to Freedom. I've been working on a book for 7 years, but it took my NDE to get it out, and my firing of my hospice job to have the time to do it. So I just published my first book. I am currently working privately as a hospice nurse, and Life Divine brought an amazing gentleman who is 94 years old. He's a Korean vet. He is an attorney who's still trying to practice, but he is, slowing down in physical form. And I work with him. And so, I'm also looking at opening up an IV business so that I can get in with people and help them feel physically better, right? But also be able to spend time with them because it at least takes an hour. And in that connection, if there's opportunity to share, then I will. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a bumpy road, but it's been a beautiful, like, you can't make this shit up. You can't make it up. Like, how is this happening? And it really is just leaning in and trusting that I need to get out of the way. And when something comes to me, I always say yes. Even with him, when I was first asked if I would go spend the night with this gentleman who had had a fall, I thought, no, that's not what I want to do. And the voice is like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. And it's turned out to be so magical. It's just beautiful.
That
So
is
that's where I am
beautiful.
now. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I will continue hospice. I have a a YouTube channel that I have started, and I'm still working on that, but to help people with transition and hopefully get people to be open to receiving it now, to looking at their junk now, so they don't have to go through the terminal agitation, but in helping people also with the terminal agitation and the process of dying and the things that they can expect, that sort of thing. Yeah.
perfect. Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, and that's beautiful because a lot of people who do have a near-death experience go through like a identity crisis, right? How do I fit back in? Our
Yeah.
relationships change, our jobs change, it's like everything just it crumbles down because we're no longer resonating at that. And it's like stepping out of that, trying to find our path. And it's like for me, like everything that I was doing before was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. Like my soul literally suffered. It was making me ill. I was like,
Yes.
I got to find a way. And so, okay, what am I okay with doing? But in that, so that's where I stepped out and I'm doing more of like coaching and then now being into doing the doula, death doula practice, which I
Thank you
also
for
help
doing
people.
that. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm helping with people with the life review. So it's kind of similar to what you're doing. So
Oh,
that's part of
great.
my doula. Um, but even with my part-time where I'm working in assisted living, certain things kind of still get to me. I'm like, so I don't know how long I'm going to be here because when something comes up, I'm like, you need to get me out of here because I can't
Yeah,
do this. And it's like, okay, it's trying to step out of all that of what we've been in for most of our lives, having our identity crisis. Okay, if I'm not that anymore, what am I? And it's like, once we get rid of that, I feel like there's always another path that opens up. So like you're going in and you're doing it as a private business, not working for another person.
right,
Right. And
right.
I think that's kind of part of the path that helps us get from that to where we're more in alignment with what we're doing.
That's so true. I would have never left hospice. And honestly, to be really transparent, I didn't, I was fudging numbers to keep them eligible because I didn't want to be the problem child at work. And I didn't even recognize I was doing that. I was just doing what we do, right? With that expectation that I was going to make it so people continued eligibility. When I recognized it, when I became aware of it, when I was sitting in front of somebody that absolutely was not eligible for hospice, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And yeah, and that was the reason for my termination. I would never have left it, never have left it if I hadn't been fired. And at my age, it was so scary. I don't have a whole lot of reserve. I don't have a big, bank to do retirement. And so it really talk about having fear come in and match me where I am and then say, okay, can you love this process? Can you be open to this process? And then as soon as I let go of that reluctance, the door started to open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And it's just transitioning, I think, because like even I see that where I'm at,
Yeah.
things that they
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing. But I don't know if it's because it's kind of like, you're like if you're ingrained into your religion, then you believe, and so you just do because that's what you're told. People at work just do because that's what they're told, and maybe they don't really understand or have the knowledge that what they're doing is not right.
Exactly. And I think that's how people get caught up in doing things that aren't quite right. It's one of the main things is we're human beings. And so the being connected to other people, we're one, but and so we we need to be validated by other people. We don't know that our validation comes from within. And so in our attempt to be liked or be a part of a group, we will just go along and not think about it because we don't necessarily want to feel bad about what it is that we're doing. And so we blindly do things, not I don't believe intentional, but we blindly do things when we're not aware. And to stand in this place can be very scary at first, to go against the social norm and not jump in and not be afraid to let people not like you or to judge you, to recognize that the only judgment that is important is that you held of yourself. And
Mhm.
if you once you do that and then you're coming from your heart place, it's almost like you can't mess it up. You just can't mess it up. Somehow I know that life is going to hold me. It's done it enough times. There's been enough miracles in my life that I know that if I just get out of the way and continue to say yes and move from my heart, that it's all going to work out.
Yeah. Yes. And what my guides share with me is, everything is for you. Nothing's against you. We're
Absolutely.
only against ourselves, and we have to listen to that little voice. So even in those scenarios where we're just listening and believing and doing what other people tell us, there's always this little inner voice that will be like, no, no, no.
That's so true. That's so true. And it's recognizing it, right? Because so many people just blow right past it. It's like they
Hmm.
can't even hear it because we're so trying to drive the train.
Exactly. We're
Yeah.
not tuning in and listening and
Yeah.
being present with ourselves,
Right.
which kind of comes back to, I feel like, is this me or is that them or is this should I is questioning. It's just, I think we have to get used to questioning all situations. Like, is this right? Is this in my highest good? Is this an alignment?
Absolutely. And we'll feel it when we are.
Hmm.
We'll know it when we are, if we can get in touch with the way it feels in the body.
Yeah, definitely. So with your takeaway, I want to kind of get into a little bit of hospice. And I know I'm not headed into hospice that I know of, but with doulaship and working with people end of life, with my business that I've started. Um, what are some things that you recognize that can be simulated between like near-death experience? And I know you already kind of talked about the whole picking. And is there
Yeah.
like visions? Did you see any loved ones come in, or did you have any of that beyond experience kind of play out in your hospice role?
So for patients, oh yeah, I gosh, somebody asked me how many people have I been with in that transition, and I've been doing it for so long, I never thought to count, but it's got to be hundreds by now. And there is very common things that happen. The terminal agitation, the life review piece of it is a very common sort of thing. And again, there's not a whole lot of education around it. I didn't know how to help people necessarily through that component of it until I went through it myself. We do have medications in hospice that we can help kind of sedate, but it doesn't necessarily get rid of what's happening underneath. And so that piece of it, seeing how people can move through that terminal agitation, being what you're doing, holding sacred space for somebody who's moving through that, letting them know that it might be a little bumpy now. That stuff is coming up to be released. They are held in love. That is all there is at the end of the day, and that is what they're returning to. Just offering that sacred space for people to be where they are without judgment or trying to take them out of it, because it's a process they need to go through. A lot of times families will want to, change what's happening, and sometimes we just have to be with them, and allow them to move through that and offer love and grace. The visioning now, that is completely different than terminal agitation, and that's a beautiful thing to witness. It's where people are between this reality and the non the what am I trying to say? The physical reality and the non-physical reality. They're between the two. They're in the spiritual realm and the physical realm, and they will see loved ones. They will see pets. They will see spiritual beings. They will see alien type things that are there kind of calling them home. They will, the visionary reach is a very common thing that we'll see, and they'll be reaching and they'll be speaking, and they are having their own conversation with their own, the essence of what they're seeing, even though we can't see it. And so many times, people are afraid of death and dying, and we don't talk about it. And so we won't be able to be present with that. But it is as beautiful as the birthing process, birthing into this world. We don't remember how bumpy it was coming through that canal, but it can be bumpy before you get into it. I think it happens the same way on the back end. It can be a little bumpy going through it, but the bumpiness will go away, and the release of the soul into eternity and the love and light from which it came is such a beautiful experience. I've seen soul leave bodies twice. It looks kind of like I explain it as a gas film that comes from this part of the body. It's like you can see the person behind this distortion, but the energy in that space, if you can be present with it, is like being in heaven. It is so beautiful. It would be like witnessing a child being born.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm anticipating some of those experiences.
Yeah, it is
Definitely.
absolutely beautiful to hold space and be aware of what's happening. Because for many years in hospice, I wasn't. I didn't know to be. There was still a component of me that didn't understand as well as I do now. So I wasn't necessarily present and just in that space without judgment, just allowing to see what's going on. And when you can do that, wow, it's beautiful.
Mm,
Every single time, it's beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So one of the things too, I think in bringing this into a close, so with having had a near-death experience and trying to be that support for them to help them through the transition, if they are like diehard religious, believing in all that stuff that's going to take them through the hellish experience, some people say as doulas, it's not our place to let them know that that's not accurate. It's not true. So how can do you feel like we can approach that to alleviate them from going through the hellish, or are we just going to hold space and let them go through it? Do you know what I mean? If
That's it.
we know that it doesn't exist from our new perspective of a near-death experience, or having that in this role of doula or hospice or whatever the case may be, how can we try to limit that if that is their belief and we should let them have their own beliefs?
Yeah, that's it right there. To allow them to move through what they're experiencing without projecting any of our judgment or anything onto that. Their journey is divine as ours is, and whatever their belief, we believe we have a better nugget and we want to turn them in that direction. But that's not the time to do it. And the belief that they have is that is not serving them will be undone without our interference, without our interference. So although it's sometimes hard and we want to give people direction and say that's false and that's going to lead you down the hellhole, I believe that we all kind of have to go through that again, whether it's we do it in this living journey or we do it at the end of life. And that's where you just have to trust that it's all happening in divine timing and divine is leading it. And we just have to step back and allow for their beliefs to be what they are without interfering with that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be probably the hard part
It
to
is
share with
challenging.
people.
I'm not going to lie. It is challenging because we want to help people, right? We want to not have people go through the suffering, but it's in the suffering that you can appreciate the light so much more.
Exactly,
It,
the contrast.
yeah,
Yep.
it's in the
So they'll get their
contrast.
lesson.
They're going to get it. They're going to get it. 100% they're going to get it.
And if we, because we step in front of our own way of our own life, right? And if we step in the way of them, then they're not going to get the benefit of it, going through it for themselves, because sometimes we have to go through it and hit rock bottom or go through the experience in order to learn the lessons. So
Right. Yeah, you said it beautifully. It is in the contrast that we can appreciate what it is that we're going towards, right? It's in the darkness that we can appreciate the light and the love that we are, the eternal beings that we are. And everybody goes through that in a different way. Um, but but holding space for that without judgment, just offering love and grace is a challenging thing to do, but I think it's essential. They're going to get there with or without our help.
right, right, yeah, yeah, because the universe got us. They had
Right,
it back.
right, right,
Yeah, and that
right,
seems like it's like this question in my mind is like, how can I help them without having them go through that? But I know that them going through that is going to help them. So it's kind of like this scenario. It's like, oh my God. But
what
yeah,
I will
thank
often
you.
do is I will, if I'm getting caught up in that, if I'm getting caught up in the struggle of seeing the struggle, I will envision them in my mind ascending to the light. And so embracing them with that light, ascending into that light. And that will relieve that need to kind of jump in. Just visualize it for them. And I had an experience with a gentleman who was an atheist, and he had no belief around anything, but he knew he was dying. And so, I was called to share with him, if you could make this journey anything you wanted, let's go ahead and put manifestation into it, right? Because we are manifesting beings. What would that look like for you? Like if you could make this your reality, what would that like for you? And so through months of working with him, he shared his experiences of what he would like. And it was him being in the forest and then walking through a river to a mountainside and climbing a mountain. And the morning of his passing, I was awoken and felt the need and urge to go in to work early. So I followed that guidance when it happens. I didn't know what that meant. But as I went in, he had had a fall and it had pushed him to the place where his transition was happening. And when I walked in, he was very fearful. And so I sat on the bed with him. He didn't have any family. And I started to remind him of what he had projected this journey was going to be like. And we walked through the field. We walked, and I'm kind of like coaching him through this. We're walking through the field, we're crossing the streams, we're seeing the flowers, we're climbing the mountain. And I could see in his eyes, the voice is very weak at that point, but there was an acknowledgement that we were on the right track. So I just kept coaching him. I'm like, you're climbing the mountain. It's really bumpy at this moment, but that's not going to last. We're almost there. And when he took his last exhale, he was one of the people that I saw spirit leave. Um, it, the pupils of the eye will be very constricted right before death. He had the most beautiful eyes. And so I'm looking in his eyes and I'm coaching him through this. And with his last breath, the pupils dilate. This joy that came over him just almost blew me back. Like I felt that I was ascending to heaven with him. And it was the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful deaths. And he had no religious affiliation, no religious doctrine. And so he created his transition. And it was so beautiful, so beautiful. I would have thought he would have had a really hard one, but his was probably it was one of the most beautiful ones I've ever experienced.
Wow, that's really nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And somebody's I talked with before in the previous YouTube video that I did, she called them kind of like angel kisses, where you just see the glow and the joy and the bliss
Oh,
on their
angel
face.
kisses. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. There is a glow. And it's not a glow. It's different because it's not, the color of the face fades, but it's magical. Yeah, angel kisses. That's beautiful. I love it.
Well, I'm looking forward to that too as well.
Yeah.
So definitely. So it's a great adventure that I'm on and a great adventure that you've been on. And thank you for sharing all your wisdom and knowledge. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we go?
Oh, I just want to encourage people to tap in to learning who they are, figure out what those triggers are, figure out where they came from, and work on undoing them, and recognize that heaven is right here, right now, and we can live from that space if you're willing to do a little bit of the hard work. If anybody's interested in my book, From Fear to Freedom, I have a website, michelleledbetter.com. I'm happy to share anything with you there. I offer coaching and then my book is there. But it really is about tapping in and recognizing those things that might be triggering and working through those so that you can create the best life you can right here and now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And so glad to have you on the for the conversation and on the channel.
Oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for reaching out to me and thank you so much for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And you as well. Thank you.
Yeah.